The Great Emu War, was it real life, or was it an offhand joke from a Douglas Adams novel? Probably both. World War I was over and a portion of now ex-soldiers migrated to Western Australia to take up farming, so all they had to deal with was the daily grind of farm life and the copious PTSD. However, that lifestyle became difficult in 1929 when the Great Depression rolled in. The farmers were encouraged by the government to increase their wheat crops in exchange for subsidies. These subsidies never came, some things never change. By 1932, wheat prices had hit a new low, and things were getting desperate. But things were about to get a lot more desperate after a particularly hot summer. Wild emus in Western Australia typically migrate from inland to the coast after breeding season. But because the summer was so hot, they were desperate for food and water. And that was a deadly combination for the farmers who had been clearing more land and growing more crops, because the emus came in, they ate the crops, they soiled the crops, and they destroyed the fences that were meant to keep the rabbits out.
It was to keep the rabbits out.
And what happens when a group of angry veterans need to blame their problems on something? They go to war. These vets knew firsthand how effective machine gun fire was, so they wrote to the government and they asked for support. Sir George Pearce, the Minister of Defence at the time, readily agreed, but on a condition. The trained soldiers weren't to use them, but deployed military troops were. The government financed their transport so long as the farmers provided food and money for ammunition. So, to get rid of the animals destroying their food and income, they gave away their food and income. Major Meredith of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery led 2 men into battle. They carried 2 Lewis guns with them, machine guns used regularly in World War I by the Allies. On November 2nd of 1932, the men arrived at Campion. Now, they sighted about 50 emus and tried shooting at them. They were out of range. And then they tried to herd them into an ambush, but that didn't work because it just convinced them to split into smaller groups. And they tried again and killed a number of birds. On November 4th, they established an ambush near a local dam that was in the path of 1,000 incoming emus. The emus started to whoosh by, the military killed about 12 of them, and then the gun jammed. And by the time it unjammed, all the emus were gone. And as a last-ditch effort, they tried mounting the guns on the back of a truck, and then the emus were faster than the truck. By 6 days in, they'd used a quarter of their 10,000 rounds of ammunition and had killed about 50 birds. Meredith's official report noted that his men suffered no casualties. He also went on to say, "The machine gunner's dreams of point-blank fire into serried masses of emus were soon dissipated. The Emu Command had evidently ordered guerrilla tactics, and its unwieldy army soon split up into innumerable small units that made use of the military equipment uneconomic. A crestfallen field force therefore withdrew from the combat area." He then praised the emus. "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with the vulnerability of tanks." Needless to say, things hadn't worked out. After the withdrawal on November 8th, the farmers were still angry because the birds were still destroying their crops. So they wrote again to the defense minister and he approved a resumption of military efforts. For some reason. So the military again loaned guns to the government. Now there was a bit of a lack of experienced machine gunners in the state, so for the role they selected Major Meredith of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery. By the 14th of November, they'd managed to kill about 40 more emus, and they did actually get better because Meredith, by the time he was recalled about a month later, had killed about 986 birds at a rate of 10 rounds per 1 bird. So it wasn't successful even when it was successful. The farmers would go on again to request military assistance in 1934, 1943, and 1948. They were denied every time because of the horrible press of an emu war. But most importantly, it produced this dialogue between the Prime Minister of the time and a backbencher that belonged to the Australian Country Party, Mr. Formby. "Who is responsible for the farce of hunting emus with machine guns mounted on lorries? Is the Defence Department meeting the cost?" Prime Minister Lyons: "I have been told that the Defence Department will not be paying the bill." And Mr. James of New South Wales fantastically added, "It's a medal to be struck for this war." And that is how Australia lost the Great Emu War, and tensions still exist to this day. One time, my dad tried to feed an emu and the emu destroyed the entire bag of food. Some wounds never heal.